news just out, Stellantis is laying off almost 2,500 factory workers from an assembly plant outside of Detroit.
I think the technical term, a mess. You know, we have seen a real collapse of sales. Their global earnings, which are heavily dependent on North America, were down about 48% for the first half.
Stellantis CEO just dropped a bombshell. Jeep, Dodge, and Ram are officially history. But here's the kicker, it could be the smartest move they've ever made. From quality nightmares to plummeting sales, it looks like killing off these iconic brands might be Stellantis' only way out. You see, Stellantis is in deep trouble. Their net income dropped by a whopping 48% in just 6 months. That's not a little stumble, that's a full-on faceplant. And now, they're sitting on a mountain of unsold cars that nobody wants to buy. So why would closing these beloved American brands be smart? It's simple. Stellantis is bleeding money, and these brands are the biggest wounds. By cutting them loose, they might just save the whole company. There's not one, but 3 game-changing factors driving CEO Carlos Tavares to sound the alarm, and we're revealing them today. Let's rewind to 2021. Remember when Fiat Chrysler and PSA Group joined forces? Everyone thought it was the birth of an automotive giant. But fast forward to today, and Stellantis is struggling to keep the lights on. What went so wrong that they're now considering axing their most iconic American brands? You see, Stellantis had big dreams. They wanted to create a car empire that would dominate the market. But those dreams quickly turned into a nightmare, especially in the US. The merger that was supposed to be their golden ticket became an anchor, dragging them down faster than a lead weight. Here's where things really went off the rails. Stellantis decided to take Jeep, a brand known for rugged affordability, and turn it into a luxury brand. They rolled out models like the Grand Wagoneer thinking they'd capture the high-end market, but guess what? They completely missed the mark. Jeep's core fanbase, the folks who loved the brand for its toughness and accessibility, felt left out in the cold. Imagine showing up to your favorite burger joint only to find they've replaced all the burgers with caviar. That's how Jeep fans felt when they saw the new lineup and price tags. Speaking of price tags, let's talk about the shocking price hikes. In just 5 years, Jeep prices skyrocketed by over 50%. The Jeep Wrangler, once the go-to vehicle for adventure seekers on a budget, now starts at over $40,000. That's not just a little bump. That's pricing out an entire generation of loyal customers. The result? Jeep sales have taken a nosedive. We're talking a 20% drop in August 2024 compared to the previous year. And if you think that's bad, hold on to your steering wheel. Overall, sales have plummeted by 34% since 2018. That's not just a trend, that's a full-on crisis. But wait, it gets worse. The average price for a Jeep has shot up from under $40,000 in 2020 to over $54,000 in 2023. Stellantis thought they were being clever by going upscale, but all they did was push their traditional buyers right into the arms of their competitors. Now, Stellantis is facing a serious inventory crisis. They've got a 77-day supply of Jeeps sitting on lots, while the industry average is only 53 days. That means they're stuck with a ton of overpriced vehicles that nobody wants to buy. And when nobody's buying, you know what comes next. Heavy discounts and promotions just to move the metal. This identity crisis has done more than just hurt sales. It's damaged the very core of what Jeep stands for. The brand that was once synonymous with adventure and affordability is now seen as out of touch and overpriced. It's like they forgot who their customers were and what they wanted. And it's not just Jeep feeling the pain. This misguided strategy has put the entire Stellantis group on shaky ground. The CEO, Carlos Tavares, is now warning that they might have to shut down money-losing brands. That's corporate speak. For, we messed up big time, and now we're in trouble. While Stellantis grapples with falling sales, a more explosive problem is brewing under the hood. Remember when Jeeps were known for conquering rough terrain? Now they're making headlines for bursting into flames. It's a quality nightmare that's turning the heat up on Stellantis' already precarious situation. You see, Stellantis isn't just dealing with a pricing problem. They're facing a full-blown quality crisis that's putting their customers at risk. We're talking about 781,000 vehicles recalled due to engine fires. That's not a small hiccup. That's a major safety hazard that's burning through consumer trust faster than a Jeep catches fire. But wait, it gets worse. On top of the fire hazard, Stellantis had to recall another 1.46 million vehicles because of software issues messing with the electronic stability control systems. Imagine driving your shiny new Jeep, thinking you're safe, only to find out the very systems designed to protect you might be compromised. That's the reality Jeep owners are facing right now. These recalls aren't just a headache for Stellantis, they're a nightmare for consumers. Think about it. You buy a Jeep expecting rugged reliability, and instead, you get a vehicle that might spontaneously combust or lose control. It's no wonder Jeep sales are in free fall. And let's talk about leadership. Stellantis has been playing musical chairs with their executives, especially at Jeep. It's like they're trying to steer a ship through a storm while constantly swapping out the captain. How can you expect a brand to maintain a clear strategy when the people in charge keep changing? It's a recipe for disaster, and we're seeing the results play out in real time. This leadership chaos isn't just an internal problem. It's bleeding into every aspect of Jeep's operations. The brand that once stood for adventure and reliability is now synonymous with uncertainty and risk. And consumers are noticing. They're voting with their wallets, leaving Jeep dealerships empty and lots full of unsold vehicles. Speaking of unsold vehicles, Jeep's inventory crisis is reaching critical levels. They're sitting on a 77-day supply of vehicles while the industry average is only 53 days. That's a lot of expensive metal just gathering dust. And every day those vehicles sit unsold, Stellantis loses money. But here's the kicker. All these problems are feeding into each other, creating a vicious cycle that's eroding consumer trust and tanking sales. Think about it. Would you buy a car from a brand known for catching fire, with unstable leadership, and a history of recalls? Probably not. And neither are millions of other potential customers. This perfect storm of quality issues, leadership instability, and inventory problems is pushing Stellantis to the brink. They're losing ground to competitors who are capitalizing on Jeep's missteps. While other brands are innovating and improving, Stellantis is stuck putting out fires, both literal and figurative. Carlos Tavares, Stellantis' CEO, isn't mincing words. He's warned that they'll shut down money-losing brands. That's not just tough talk, it's a desperate move from a company running out of options. When your CEO starts threatening to axe iconic brands, you know things are bad. The truth is, Stellantis is in a fight for survival. They're not just competing against other car manufacturers anymore. They're battling against their own mistakes and mismanagement. And right now, it looks like they're losing. Just when you thought Stellantis couldn't dig themselves any deeper, they've decided to double down. Their latest move? A massive gamble on electric vehicles that's costing them $406 million. But here's the real kicker. This desperate play might be exactly what sinks them for good. You see, Stellantis is throwing everything they've got into retooling 3 plants in Michigan for electric vehicle production. They're talking about electrified versions of popular models like the Jeep Wagoneer and the Ram 1500 Rev. Sounds impressive, right? But watch carefully, because this might be the last gasp of a dying giant. Let's be honest, Stellantis is showing up late to a party that's already in full swing. While other automakers have been perfecting their electric game for years, Stellantis is just now trying to catch up. And in the fast-paced world of EVs, being late can be fatal. But here's where things get really interesting. Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares is warning about an EV price war. He's calling it a bloodbath that could destroy profitability across the entire automotive industry. Imagine that. The very thing Stellantis is betting on could be the thing that kills them. And let's talk about those prices for a second. Stellantis is struggling to make their EVs affordable for the average Joe. They're trying to achieve cost parity with traditional gas guzzlers, but it's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. The math just isn't adding up. This late entry into the EV market isn't just a minor setback. It's put Stellantis at a massive disadvantage. While other companies are refining their second or third generation of electric vehicles, Stellantis is still fumbling with the basics. It's like they've brought a knife to a gunfight. And here's something that'll really make your head spin. As Stellantis pours money into EVs, they're facing a crisis with their traditional vehicles. Sales are dropping faster than a lead balloon, and consumer preferences are shifting away from their gas-powered lineup. Talk about being caught between a rock and a hard place. But wait, there's more. Critics are worried that this focus on electrification might water down the brand identity of icons like Jeep. You know, the rugged, go-anywhere image that made Jeep famous. Yeah, that might be going out the window. It's like they're trying to turn a monster truck into a Prius. So, what does all this mean for you, the budget-conscious car buyer? Well, it could go one of two ways. If Stellantis manages to pull off this EV gamble, we might see some affordable electric options hitting the market. But if they fail, we could be looking at the collapse of some of America's most iconic car brands. And don't think the government isn't watching. There's talk of a potential $1 billion bailout to help Stellantis transition to electric vehicles. But let's be real, that's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. It might stop the bleeding for a while, but it's not going to fix the underlying problem. While Stellantis struggles to keep its head above water, there's a tidal wave of consequences crashing down on everyone from dealerships to factory workers. Ever wonder how a car company's troubles can end up costing you more at the dealership? You're about to find out. The inventory nightmare at Stellantis is reaching critical levels. They're not just dealing with a few extra cars on the lot. We're talking about a staggering 1.4 million unsold vehicles. That's enough cars to fill every parking spot in Manhattan twice over. And guess who's feeling the squeeze? The dealerships. These dealerships are stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one side, they've got Stellantis pushing them to take more inventory. On the other, they're facing customers who just aren't buying. It's like trying to sell ice to Eskimos, but the ice is on fire and the Eskimos are broke. The Stellantis National Dealer Council is sounding the alarm. They're saying that CEO Carlos Tavares is too focused on short-term gains, sacrificing long-term growth. It's like Tavares is trying to win a sprint in the middle of a marathon. Sure, he might be ahead for a moment, but at what cost? And it's not just about the cars. Dealers are feeling abandoned by Stellantis. They're drowning in unsold inventory, watching their profits evaporate. And Stellantis? They're cutting marketing budgets. It's like giving someone a boat with a hole in it, and then taking away their bucket. But wait, it gets worse. The workers at Stellantis are fed up. We're talking about 98% of United Auto Workers members filing grievances. That's not just a few disgruntled employees. That's practically the entire workforce saying, enough is enough. And Stellantis' response? Layoffs. Nearly 2,450 workers at the Warren Truck Assembly Plant are getting pink slips. That's 2,450 families wondering how they're going to pay their bills next month. It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's real people facing real consequences. The tension between Stellantis and its workforce is at a breaking point. Union leaders are warning about a national strike. Imagine that. An entire company grinding to a halt because they couldn't keep their promises to their workers. It's like a game of chicken, but with thousands of livelihoods at stake. So, how does all this affect you, the car buyer? Well, it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, you might see some killer deals as dealerships try to clear out their inventory. But on the other hand, the future of iconic brands like Jeep, Dodge, and Ram is uncertain. The cars you love might not be around much longer. And let's talk about those prices. Vehicle prices have shot up by over 50% in the past 5 years. That's not just inflation. That's a fundamental shift in the market. The affordable cars you used to love, they're becoming luxury items. Dealers are begging Stellantis for help. They want better incentive programs to move these cars off their lots. But with Stellantis bleeding money, how much help can they really offer? It's like asking a drowning man to throw you a life preserver. The crisis at Stellantis isn't just about cars anymore. It's about people. It's about the workers who built their lives around these factories. It's about the dealers who invested everything in these brands. And it's about you, the consumer, watching as your options dwindle and prices soar. Stellantis is facing a make-or-break moment. With profits plummeting and inventory piling up, bankruptcy isn't just a whisper anymore. It's a real possibility. But here's the kicker. Could this crisis actually lead to a stronger, leaner Stellantis? You see, Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares isn't mincing words. He's made it clear that if brands don't make money, they'll be shut down. That's not just tough talk. It's a desperate move from a company running out of options. When your CEO starts threatening to axe iconic brands, you know things are bad. Let's be honest, Stellantis is in a fight for survival. They're not just competing against other car manufacturers anymore. They're battling against their own mistakes and mismanagement. And right now, it looks like they're losing. The numbers don't lie. Stellantis reported a staggering 48% drop in net profits for the first half of 2024 compared to the previous year. That's not just a stumble, that's a full-on faceplant. And with Dodge and Jeep brands experiencing sales declines of 67% and 44% respectively since their peak years, the writing's on the wall. So, what are Stellantis' options? Bankruptcy is on the table, and it's looking more likely by the day. If current trends continue, Stellantis might have no choice but to file for Chapter 11. Imagine that, one of the world's largest automakers brought to its knees. But bankruptcy isn't the only path forward. Stellantis could opt for a major restructuring. This might mean closing underperforming brands or selling them off to the highest bidder. Jeep, Dodge, Ram. These iconic American brands could end up on the chopping block or in the hands of new owners. And what would a revitalized Stellantis look like? Well, it might be a much smaller company. They could focus on their most profitable brands and markets, cutting away the dead weight that's been dragging them down. It's like pruning a tree. Sometimes you need to cut off some branches to save the whole plant. Tavares has mentioned plans to launch 20 new vehicles in 2024. It's a bold move, but will it be enough? With the company's track record, it's hard to be optimistic. It's like trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. Too little, too late. Now, let's talk about what this means for the automotive landscape. If Jeep, Dodge, and Ram disappear, it would be like erasing a chunk of American car culture. These brands have been part of the fabric of the US auto industry for decades. Their loss would leave a void that competitors would rush to fill. But it's not just about nostalgia. The disappearance of these brands could mean fewer choices for consumers, especially in the truck and SUV segments. And with fewer players in the market, we might see prices go up as competition decreases. For budget-conscious car buyers, this could be a double-edged sword. In the short term, you might see some killer deals as Stellantis tries to clear out inventory. But in the long run, you could be looking at higher prices and fewer options. The billion-dollar question is, can Stellantis turn things around? They're betting big on electric vehicles, pouring $406 million into retooling plants for EV production. But they're late to the game, and the EV market is already crowded. It's like showing up to a marathon when everyone else is already on their second lap. And let's not forget about the workers and communities that depend on Stellantis. A bankruptcy or major restructuring could mean massive job losses and economic ripple effects across multiple states. We're not just talking about numbers on a spreadsheet, we're talking about real people's livelihoods. The truth is, Stellantis is at a crossroads. The decisions they make in the coming months will shape not just their future, but the future of the American auto industry. Will they find a way to innovate and adapt, or will they become another cautionary tale in the history of big business? Stellantis' crisis isn't just about big corporations. It's about you and your next car. With Jeep, Dodge, and Ram on shaky ground, your options for affordable American-made vehicles are shrinking fast. Remember when Jeep was known for rugged affordability? Those days might be over. The average price for a Jeep has skyrocketed from $40,000 to $54,000 in just 3 years. That's not just a price hike, that's pricing out an entire generation of buyers. And it's not just Jeep. The whole industry is feeling the heat from the electric vehicle transition. So what's next? you might see some killer deals as dealers try to clear out inventory. But long term, expect fewer choices and higher prices. The affordable car market is changing, and not for the better. Will American brands survive this storm, or are we looking at the end of an era?